Raptors, I gave a B minus.
Same.
You said a B minus?
B minus, yeah.
Really?
Someone was living on
For-
Raptors Twitter too much, seeing all the negativity. That's what I'm
Raptors
hearing.
beef.
That's what I'm hearing.
For the Raptors, listen. I think I'm going to have to go with a C minus. And here's why I'm going to go with a C minus. Is because, this team just got a little bit better. But what did we say last week? Who is coming off the bench? And whichever guy that is coming off the bench, I don't think that guy's going to be too happy. What do you got right there? Probably a little bit of chemistry issues. Also, a lot of the guys that were in trade talks, I don't know if their value's going up. Contracts aren't getting longer, and I mean, unless this team goes on some crazy push to end the season, I think the Raptors going into the trade deadline were like, we titled a video that we released. The trade deadline basically runs through the Raptors. The Raptors control the trade deadline. Like, they were the hot seller. I think teams would have given up a lot to get some of these guys, especially KD on the Suns. A lot of Western Conference teams probably would have given up a solid package. But what did the Raptors do? They decided to sit on that and really just let it ride to the offseason. And now when they get there, I really don't know if the packages that they're going to be able to send out to get things back are going to be quite as good as what they could have been. So I know I've made it known several times the direction I think the Raptors could go in. I do think they have a very limited ceiling with this core. So given that, the fact that they went in the opposite of that direction and maybe passed up, and I've said for a lot of teams in this video, they probably could have gotten off of him earlier and gotten better returns. I feel like the Raptors could get towards that by sitting on assets a little bit too long. And because it's the opposite direction I think they should have gone in, given their standing in this conference right now, I am going to have to go with the C minus.
I think the only thing that's tough with, because I agree to a point that they might end up missing on the key window to trade guys as far as value goes, but it sounds like pretty much any trade the Raptors were going to make at the deadline, they were just getting a ton of picks and they weren't really getting any player value. And I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're full rebuilding, then sure, but objectively, if I'm just thinking of the Raptors trade deadline, they were never going to full rebuild. That just wasn't going to happen. And so with that in mind, trading away OG for just 3 firsts and no player value doesn't really make any sense. So I can only be so harsh on them not making a secondary move and not being able to sort out the fact that they have 6 starters and be able to retool a little bit. So it would have been ideal, but I can't give them anything more than a B minus because of it. But given at least what the rumored offers were that were out there, I struggle to make it any worse.
Yeah, I'm like Gabe. I get what you're saying. Like sometimes you can't hold on to guys for too long, but I think there's a flip side to that too, right? I think sometimes it's better to wait until the offseason to make moves. I kind of wanted to ask you guys that about KD, like with the Nets have maybe been better off just waiting until the offseason to make that move. I think there's kind of two sides to it as well. So I'm not like completely pissed the Raptors didn't make any other trades outside of getting Jakob Poeltl. Like maybe it just wasn't there. Maybe they are valuing OG a little too high, so they will have to wait till the offseason to really make that move. So I'm not really like too mad at them. Now maybe if re-signing Freddie and Gary Trent is an issue, that might be something more to dive into. But sometimes the trades just aren't there. Like if we're just being honest, sometimes they're not there. So like Devin said, like just getting picks and no player value back for OG, is that what they want to do? Because it's clear they're trying to commit to some type of competitive team. It does make sense why they didn't make any other moves because they probably weren't going to be ones that would benefit them right now. So it kind of makes sense a little bit. I will go about B minus too because they got a big. I can't fault them for getting better as a basketball team. Now figuring out, how your rotations are going to be, that's a Nick Nurse problem. But from a managerial standpoint, I think they had a solid trade deadline.
So here's my thing about waiting till the offseason, right? Is that when it comes to the offseason, we aren't sure what the makeup of the league is going to look like. We don't know who favorites will be. We don't really know what the landscape is going to look like at that point. And I think right now, and this is a possible theory to why picks just seem to be flying everywhere, the league right now was wide open, especially the Western Conference. And you think usually when you trade a high-value player, you trade them cross-conference. So you're thinking the Raptors, if they're making these trades, there's probably going to a Western Conference buyer. And, like, looking at that, it's just like now was the time where a lot of teams are probably going to think, oh, there's this giant window to go in and try and win a title. Let's get as good as we can right now because we don't know if that opportunity is going to be there for us next year. And so given that, if you're trying to use your leverage as a seller, you could say, hey, you're going to have to give us this for the piece now or else your window might close. Now, if you're a team that could have used OG as maybe a solid defender on KD, and now he comes out and he just cooks you for 7 games and now you're out, you might turn around next year and not have that same opportunity.
Or you might overpay in the offseason and get an OG. Like, that's always a possibility. So I do get what you're saying, but, you know, it kind of wonders to me if it's more of a, like, Masai thing, because if the reports about, like, Memphis really being engaged, wanting OG were true, I wonder why that trade didn't happen. Maybe Masai was asking for too much. Maybe he wanted Desmond Bane back too or something like that. And, like, I don't know. I would love to be able to hear like those trade talks. Like what is the reason why that trade did not get done? Because OG seemed like the inevitable name that needs to be moved, right? Didn't happen. Will it happen in the offseason? We'll see. I don't know. I can't really be too mad at them for staying put because they did get better as a basketball team adding Poeltl. But as I do see from the fans' perspective, you're probably like, you're kind of tired of this iteration of the team. You would like for them to choose a direction or make that drastic change. It does kind of make sense why you feel that way.
Just a bit directionless overall. You know, I think it kind of did not resolve the issue they had at all of like, oh, we have way too many forwards on this team. And now they still have too many forwards on this team.
Who's been because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched any Raptors games since the deadline. Is Poeltl's played so far, right?
Yeah, OG is still out, so Poeltl didn't start the first game just to get him up into speed and adjusted and whatnot, but he started the last game. But yeah, OG's been out, so they haven't had to have a proper dilemma yet of who's coming off the bench.
Interesting.
That Pistons game didn't have Gary Trent in either.
Yes.
So we haven't seen the lineup yet.
I feel like
the beauty of the NBA these days, you can have 6 starters and you hardly ever have to have a dilemma of figuring out who comes off the bench.
Till now, I guess. I feel like it's either going to be Poeltl comes off the bench but plays a lot of minutes, or OG is full-time off the bench. Because anything other than that doesn't really make sense to me.
They could do Gary Trent off the bench, maybe a little less likely, but I think it's an option. I think if you just run Fred, 3 wings, Poeltl.
That does seem like the Raptor thing to do.
It's very Nick Nurse.
Still maximize your wings, even if it's sacrificing the shooting of Gary Trent, even though, you know, he's very hot and cold player, but still a good shooter.
So, I mean, it's possible to bring Gary, but most likely probably will be OG, especially because there's so many talks like, oh, OG might be a little frustrated with his role, might want a little bit more, and he was the biggest name in trade talks. I think they may be a little bit more willing to compromise his happiness.
I think coming off the bench it can be a bigger role, right? I think it could be. There's just that negative connotation with, oh, I come off the bench now. But that could be your chance for a bigger role in a way.
I think the biggest question will be if they have a conversation with Gary and if it seems that him coming off of the bench is going to be the nail in the coffin that has him not wanting to come back to Toronto, then they'll probably try and avoid it. If he's fine with it for the rest of the year, then they'll probably make him the guy off the bench. A, because I think it gives them a little bit better scoring punch as far as the sixth man. And B, yeah, there is the argument that OG's the guy who's more likely to get traded. He's reportedly more unhappy. There's also an argument in that case that if they bury him on the bench, then they just plummet his trade value this summer because teams know that OG has to be moved this summer. So I think there's an argument to be a little bit wary of that too, so you don't hamper his trade value this summer if their idea is then to move him this summer. If they don't care to move him, then it's here or there. But if they want that option available, then that's probably something they should be cautious of.
So a lot of psychological warfare is going to have to go on in the next couple months, man.
A lot of egos to manage and trade values to maintain. I'll say that much.